I'm so excited to be talking to Taryn Southern, who is a leader in the AI space. And what's so cool about Taryn is she's not just a talker, she's a doer. She's been at the vanguard of using AI for things like, filmmaking, music. She just knows the space so well, and she's not afraid to get her hands dirty. So I really want to know her insights about what it's like to use these tools and how they can help us transform our lives. Hey everyone, this is Digital Disruption. I'm Jeff Nielsen, and today I'm here with Taryn Southern. One of the reasons I'm excited to talk to you today is, I talk to a lot of kind of thought leaders in the emerging tech space, and I absolutely consider you a thought leader in the space, but you're also like very much on the front lines when it comes to these technologies, right? Like you're a creator, you're trying this stuff out, and you've been doing that for a long time. And so, I wanted to ask you, like, what right now has you most excited in the tech space, as someone who's actually applying this stuff?
That's a great question. So, there's these moments in history or in time where something new comes on the scene and you step back and you're like, whoa, this just changes everything. And I suppose when ChatGPT came out with their large language model, that was one of those moments for me. But my first moments with AI really started in 2016, 2017 in virtual reality, back even
Right.
before then, probably 2012, 2013. And so outside of the launch of ChatGPT, I don't think I've had any of those massive hair-raising moments. And it's been a couple of years now since we've been accustomed to that. I mean, I also work in the brain-computer interface space, which is really sort of like the next of combining the human brain with some of these emerging tools. So I think, my imagination takes me to places where we're combining all of these tools together, and it's not hard to see it. But I haven't really had that hair-raising moment in the past year and a half, because I feel like I've been playing with all of this now for some time.
That's completely fair. And I'd love to talk about your imagination for a minute, because that's, as you start to look at some of these, and especially, the brain computing and AI, like it just really feels like it could take off in any direction. Do you have in your mind's eye, like some potential use cases or even some potential spaces that you see as being like, rife for innovation here?
Totally. And I'm actually going to walk back what I just said. I did just remember a hair-raising moment that I had 6 weeks ago, probably 7 weeks
Okay.
ago. And it was when I saw the Optimus robots at Elon's
Right.
launch party. And the robots were moving and engaging with other humans with such ease. And like the way that they moved, the way that they were conversationally speaking, it was really that combination moment of, oh, this is what happens when you combine the best of robotics with the best of LLM technology and fuse it into one. And I said to myself, every single person on the planet is going to have one of these or some version of this in their home by 2030. I don't see how it's possible. I mean, resources not being a
Hey,
constraint.
I love the prediction. I love it.
Because,
Go
you
bold.
think about this, and he's already saying it'll be what the cost of a car, 20 to 30 grand.
Mhm.
And you think about how this will help the average person cook healthy meals,
Yeah.
clean their house, not once a week, but every single day, pick up after the kids, maybe even babysit the kids. I mean, we have to get to a level of trust with these machines before doing that. But I mean, you talk about removing all the friction out of life, and all of a sudden everyone is living as though they're part of the 1% of the 1%, with a personal assistant slash butler slash home chef slash, nanny. And I mean, that really starts changing everything about the way that we do life when we have all of this extra time that's not spent on those kinds of things. So that got me honestly really excited. Like, I know for me, if I had to choose between having a car and having an Optimus robot that can do all those things, I would choose the Optimus robot every time.
Right. Well, and what's really exciting about that to me is like one of the critiques, or I guess I'd call it like angsts about AI, is like I feel like AI, and especially like, with the LLMs, is it really quickly jumped into taking over creative tasks, right? Like suddenly it can draw, it can write music. And, people are saying like, hey, wait a minute. I thought that like AI was going to do the dishes so that I could be a musician. And suddenly it's writing the music and, crap, I'm still doing the dishes. So yeah, I mean, if we can solve the dishes problem, I mean, sign me up, right?
Agree. And to your point on the AI taking over creative tasks, I mean, that's something that I've been sort of trying to wrap my head around for a long time, because as a creative, I never felt particularly threatened by these tools or concerned about them. Granted, my career has been one where I've always made major amendments based upon whatever technology is happening. And so I've had a very flexible, fluid career, kind of built upon whatever new is happening in the world of tech. But I think it'll make Buddhists out of a lot of us in some form or fashion. This idea that instead of basing our purpose and meaning around achievement and being special and being better, what if the meaning and purpose just comes from the act of doing and just enjoying the act of doing? Like, is it enough to just be able to play music, or do you have to be better than the AI?
Right.
And I think these are the kinds of questions that it'll ask from us. But I get really excited about the idea of spending more time on all of my creative endeavors, regardless of whether the AI can do it better. And I'm probably going to be using and working with the AI on the creative endeavors and spending less time doing the dishes. And honestly, folding laundry. That's the biggest one for me.
Yeah.
I really would like to never fold another piece of laundry the rest of my life.
I can totally relate to that. So I mean, on the creative side, Taryn, you mentioned like you're kind of calling BS on the like, hey, AI is going to take this away from us, and like, we can be creative and we can be creative there with AI. And I mean, you've created music with AI. You've kind of been at the vanguard of some of this stuff, and just kind of watching some of your videos, you seem to like exude this optimism in general about like AI and technology. And so, can you dig a little bit deeper, I guess? Can you share a little bit more just about like how you view that unfolding for, I mean, maybe in two ways. One of them is for like creative souls, and the other one is for people who work in creative jobs.
The optimism is not a pretense. Like, I really do feel so optimistic. I think sometimes it's important for me to asterisk that with, of course, there's concerns. Of course, there are issues that need to be hashed out and discussed. I, like an artist, am very concerned about compensation models and how we have people making a living 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So there are concerns. But all that being said, I come from the world of early content creation, which was really all about, it was this kind of movement towards DIY creativity. You had this system that had been in place for so many years, and like the television film industry being quote unquote the system. And it was a system of gatekeeping, and it was a system of segmentation where you would have a single trade and you would excel at that trade, whether it was lighting or cinematography or acting or writing or directing. And very rarely did you see people move fluidly between these kinds of disciplines, right? Not only that, but you had to have your agent to be able to even get in front of, the people who could greenlight a project, who could finance a project. I mean, a very challenging industry, and one that tended to benefit people who were already on the inside. And all of a sudden, YouTube came along, and it gave this platform and this opportunity for young creators to just experiment with all of the new technologies that were coming out. I mean, cameras, editing softwares, sort of music generation softwares, a lot of that was happening simultaneously with YouTube becoming a platform, and people realizing, oh, we have a way to tell stories and we have a way for those stories to be seen. Now, how do we tell those stories cheaper, faster, better? Because we don't have an option. We don't have any money. So we have to experiment. And so I think that is a worldview that I've taken with me into the space of AI, which is one of pure experimentation. And the reality is, if you are incredibly skilled at any one of these creative endeavors, whether it's drawing or animation or, acting or music, I mean, it might be that using an AI tool actually is more challenging than just doing it yourself, because you have deep, deep expertise. So in some ways, AI is not a shortcut and it's not an amplifier. And And for those individuals, I think great, like continue doing the thing that you excel at really deeply. And then what are the other ways that these other AI tools outside of your expertise that still sit in the creative space will allow you to share your vision in new and novel ways that you didn't even consider? So I'll give you an example of my AI album. Let's say I had decided not to use AI to make the music because I was a really skilled musician, but I wanted to use AI to help me with these immersive virtual reality videos and the creation of that. Well, I could do that. And that might have been something that financially would have been a resource constraint for me in previous years. And I wouldn't have even considered allowing my audience or followers to have that kind of experience with my music. So I kind of feel like for most artists, AI usually represents one of a few things. It's either a substitute for a skill that you kind of lack or feel you're limiting in. It's an amplifier of a skill or talent that you already are good at, or it's allowing you to kind of combine artistic disciplines with an entirely new one, which allows you to reach new audiences and have like different types of formats where you can take your art and present it to different people. So that's why I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, everything you presented there, Taryn, like it's very much in your mind. It's like an and, right? It's and I can do more. And, one of the things I've been thinking about and that, I'm gently optimistic about, and I'm curious on your take as well, is that, whether you're an artist who's, you need help in an adjacent discipline, or even like whether you're that creative type, or even whether you're an entrepreneur, right? Like it seems like having this toolkit that helps you like do one thing really well and get everything done around that, like it almost reminds me of like, it seems like in the last like 50 years or whatever, there's just been this explosion of these massive companies and these massive film studios. And anytime you're doing anything, you need to have a team of like 200 people supporting you. And like with YouTube or with AI now, it gets back to like, and maybe it sounds silly, but like this like age of like any one person can be a merchant, like like, a bard, or I don't know, I'm like maybe going too far down like D&D or something, but like you can do something by yourself and you can like be your own kind of amplification. Are you seeing that? Like, are people taking advantage of that? And do you think that that's like the future for the next 10 years and beyond?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think people who really have a clear vision in their mind for something they want to create and have a more multidisciplinary background are going to really excel at these tools. That or people who have deep expertise, who are very interested in kind of collaborating with these tools to fill in the areas that they don't have. I think it's sort of one or the other. And you see directors, people like Guillermo del Toro or Quentin Tarantino, who are writing and directing their films. A lot of times they're acting in them. They have a lot of these different skill sets, and they tend to create really amazing work because their vision is less tainted in many ways by this, dare I say, like over collaborative, over collaboration.
Too many cooks.
That's often too many cooks in the kitchen. That's often found in Hollywood. And so I get really excited about, well, what happens when you've got the, 19-year-old kid from Ireland who has this really cool story that would never get greenlit by a traditional studio exec. And now they have all the tools to be able to make it on their own and complete their entire mission from scratch. I think that's super exciting. I think we'll finally see if anything, I think we'll see like more creativity breaking out because it won't be constrained by these systems that have been the gatekeepers.
Yeah. And you talk about like, I love the vision of, the 19-year-old kid from Ireland. And I don't know if that's specific or that's, generic, but like, I love that for the 19-year-old. I love that for consumers of film. Do studios need to be worried? Like, is this a winners and losers situation? And who are the people or organizations, I guess, that need to be on their toes in this kind of changing world?
I think studios should be very worried. I think anyone who's been an intermediary for a long period of time, who's sort of been responsible for the financing or like the middleman deals, should be very concerned. And that's not just the case in Hollywood. I think that's the case across every industry. It's being disintermediated by these technologies. and it's making everything cheaper and more easily accessible. So I don't know what the studios are going to do. I hope that they become really good at curating, because we are going to have a problem with noise as a result of these tools making everything cheaper and faster. And well, all of a sudden, everyone's going to be making content. A lot of that's going to be very bad. So who is it that has sort of the taste-making abilities to curate the best content and deliver it in a way that is really appealing to large audiences? So maybe that'll be the streamers, maybe that'll be the studios, but someone's going to have to win at least that game.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting, because that, like, when you said that, like, someone has to be curating, like, maybe depressingly, like, my mind went to, like, oh, the algorithm. Like, the algorithm will tell us what to watch and what to like. And so, what role do, like, these, big tech kind of megacorps play in all this? And I'm thinking about YouTube, right? Because YouTube is like, this sea-changing platform for video, for content creation, and it's only exploded, since, you were, taking off on it, years ago. But, are the tech companies becoming too powerful here? Like, is there, I don't know, is there a dystopian risk? What do you see the changing role of, the technology companies who, like, own the platforms as here?
It's such a complicated question, and my answer will probably be a little vague. I think it's both and. I absolutely see the dystopian version of all this. We're already living in it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all addicted to our smartphones and these social media apps that are designed to keep our attention for as long as possible. The algorithm is creating a feedback loop around the types of content people want, and that is also informing what content creators are making. And in many ways, you're seeing this, I think, sort of race to the bottom, both in content and in storytelling. Of course, there's good stuff out there. I don't want to say everything is bad. There are plenty of really inspiring creators doing amazing things, but there's also just, there are now hundreds of thousands of creators dedicated to teaching other people how to grab attention, how to get someone to click on your video and stay on you for longer than 3 seconds. And they're boiling this down into a science. And so what we're doing is we're actually changing the way that our own brains take in content and information. We're making it harder for people to read books, harder for people to even watch long form TV and film content, because we're so used to the insanely fast colors and sounds and transitions and, just name all the things to create ultimate stimulation. So there is something incredibly dystopian about that. And we're already in it. And then as we look to the future with AI, and as you were saying, these algorithms that could essentially become the tastemakers that are choosing the content, that are, will they just be appealing to our own worst instincts? Will they just be appealing to the little, like, dopamine devil on all of our shoulders that's just craving, that shock value or something that's not really ultimately good for us? And my hope is that over the next few years, and I think we're starting to get there with all the conversation around kids and smartphones and the laws that are being passed, and Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. I mean, like, there is more and more awareness. We need to be able to have a system where we log on and we set goals for ourselves with our smartphone. And then it is through those goals that the social media and the algorithms are tailored according to our preferences. Because we're not, like, and so my goal would be, please do not serve me content that appeals to, like, these three base levels of my brain. I don't want it. The person that cares about my long-term health knows that it's bad for me. So I want to be able to make those selections up front and then have the algorithm actually follow my instructions.
Right. But in terms of how you execute that, Taryn, you see, like, the individual as being, like, in the middle of that, right? Like the individual has to choose that versus it being, like, incumbent on technology, like incumbent on like governments or regulations. It's, in your world, it's like Taryn making the right choice. Is that fair, or is it a combination?
I don't know that any of us trust the tech companies to do it or to do it well.
Yeah.
They're not incentivized to. They are incentivized to give us individual optionality, because that in a competitive landscape, if more and more people are saying we need that, then I do think that will be a winning solution for a lot of these platforms. In terms of government, I mean, do any of us really trust that the government understands anything about these technologies and how to actually regulate them? I don't believe so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to touch that one. Like, I don't have anything to put up my hand and be like, yeah, they're going to nail it and they're going to nail it now. It's completely fair. So, looking out at the horizon, um, d- I guess, where is this going? Do you have trust in, us as individuals? Like, do you think there's going to be a backlash against this? Like, are enough people going to say, I've had enough of this. I'm going to go, read a book in a cabin in the woods. Or do we end up just kind of barreling toward this like Matrix style vision where we're just like, there's more and more technology locking us into this, dopamine rush?
It's both. I think we're going to see both. A lot of the people that I am friends with who are deep in the AI world, AI artists, AI engineers, social media influencers who've been making content now for 20 years, like, we know what this is doing to our brains.
Yeah.
And we're actively doing everything we can to get away from it. And it's even hard for us.
Right.
I think it's very telling when you look at social media executives, like Facebook VPs or Meta VPs. A lot of them do not allow their kids to have, Instagram or these other social media profiles until they're of age. And so in many ways, I kind of feel this is really dystopian, but I kind of feel that I'm concerned that there will be a socioeconomic association with people who are actually able to sort of tune out, because it takes a certain amount of almost like money and like awareness and money to be able to prevent your children.
It becomes a privilege, right? Almost.
It's a privilege, yeah, because you can afford a nanny who can like play physical games with your children and keep them actively busy, while the poor parent who's working 16-hour days, the easiest thing is to give their kid a phone to keep them busy.
Yeah.
And that's certainly much cheaper than a babysitter. I do fear that we're going to have some disparity there around kids that sort of grow up addicted to their phones versus kids who are placed in these kind of special programs, so that they can have a smartphone less childhood. So that's one area of concern that I have. But I do think that there will be a push and more and more backlash against these companies, against targeting of children. I don't know how long it'll take for adults to figure out how bad this is for us. I mean, I think we all sort of know it.
Yeah.
But this like being available for work 24/7 through the smartphone, what does this do to our minds and therefore our bodies over a 20, 30-year period? We're sort of the first generation to be finding that out. I was watching a film yesterday that took place in the 90s, and I was laughing so hard because it was like the guy goes to the office and he gets his like 2 phone calls a day, and he's like handwriting out some letters.
Oh my gosh.
And I was feeling into that workday and feeling into how much less information and data you're taking and how much less stimulating it must have been. And I felt my whole body felt lighter. Like, wow, instead of thousands of emails, you're just dealing with this 2 calls. It's so funny. And it made me feel sad. It made me feel really sad for this existence that we will never know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't help but reflect on the same thing, right? Like I'm physically in an office here today, but you like you and I, like we're talking over like a laptop. It's virtual. And like 5 years ago, this just didn't happen the same way. And I feel like we've gone down a path where we've normalized it to such a degree where it's like, there's like the meme or whatever about like, enough bad screen for the day. Now I'm going to look at good screen. Because like, it's all screen time. It's one kind of screen time or another. And, it used to be that, you would go into a building with a bunch of people and you'd like get up and walk around and talk to them. And like, we've convinced ourselves that like screens are somehow the same as a bunch of people in a room, and I think it's like it's close enough that it gets the job done, but like, yeah, like to your point, like is the like rhythm for people getting faster and faster, and like what impact does that have on our, on our individual and collective well-being?
I mean, do you ever feel sick when you have to go to your computer and turn it on? Because I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are moments
Yeah.
where I'm like, oh, I just don't want to open up the screen. I can't do
Yeah.
it. I have a headache just thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
similar to that too, like it sounds silly, but I'll go into a physical meeting now with people. Like I literally just mean myself and like 4 other people in a room, and I'm like, this is the greatest. Like it's just like I'm like so excited to be in a work meeting, and I'm like, I don't know, myself 5 years ago would have been like, Jeff, what happened to you? Like it's just like I don't know, like things have changed so much that like looking back at that, yeah, it's like it's almost nostalgic in a way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know. It's so hard. I mean, there's so many things about where we've been evolving that I'm so excited about too. So that's
Yeah.
why it's just kind of hard to know whether the optimism is misplaced or appropriately cautious. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to, Taryn, I want to like completely shift gears here because we haven't really touched on neurotech. And, neurotech, to be honest, is like, talking to you is like one of the things I'm most fascinated about that I'd love to kind of like pick your brain to hear more about. Because I know you're talking to people in the space. You've got your own kind of background in it. For kind of the laymen and women who aren't up to speed on neurotech, like, can you give us kind of the flyby? Like, what is the state of neurotech today that people may not be hearing about?
Totally. So I'll give just a little bit of background so people understand kind of where I come from on this subject. So in 2016, I started working to put together a documentary that chronicled the first ever patients receiving brain-computer interfaces. At that time, there had really been no film done following these patients and the decision to undergo invasive brain surgery and what it meant to have a brain chip connecting you to a computer. So that ended up being a 4-year project. The result is called I Am Human, and it premiered at Tribeca Film Festival in 2019. And then following the release of that film, I ended up getting a job offer from one of the companies whose technology is featured in or it's used by several of the patients. And because it was COVID, I said, why not? Like, let's get this. This will be an interesting opportunity. Yeah. And so I've been with that company, Blackrock Neurotech, now for 4 years. And I'm really fortunate because they have their technology has been implanted in more patients than any other of the implantable tech companies combined by a landslide. And I get to work with the patients that are implanted directly almost every day. It's amazing. It's awe-inspiring. They've implanted more than 40 people, mostly with paralysis and ALS, over the last 2 decades. And those individuals that have these brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs for short, essentially have the ability to do anything you and I can do with a computer just by thinking about it. So they have these little implants called arrays that go into usually their motor cortex or their sensory cortex, and that enables them to operate a robotic arm or move a cursor across a computer screen or type simply by imagining themselves actually performing those motor actions. So it looks like magic when you're watching it. You're like, is that telekinesis? But no, it's just pure science, and it's amazing. And it's also thanks to these advanced algorithms that we're actually able to decode these very complex signals from the brain to turn it into something useful for these individuals. So I'm super excited by the work, on the kind of bleeding edge of this. Some of the patients are able to also receive tactile sensation through a robotic arm, vis-a-vis the two-way information going back and forth between the implant and their brain. So there's a lot of really interesting kind of use cases that we may see with this technology in the next 5 to 10 years.
And that's like, I'm just still processing that and like blown away by it. Cause I mean, you talk about telekinesis, but it feels like magic, right? Like it feels like magic and like I don't know, like it's like going from like, oh, the like evils of social media to like letting people like, feel again and live their lives is just so powerful. Taryn, with brain computer interface, how close are we to, kind of mass market adoption of this and this being available to, anyone who's, faced with paralysis or this kind of array of challenges?
So I'm hoping the FDA approval for people with paralysis or other similar neurodegenerative diseases have the ability to get this within the next few years. I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be possible, given the amount of safety and efficacy data that we've accumulated over 2 decades. But this is still a novel idea for a lot of
Yeah.
people, and obviously opening up your skull and going through invasive brain surgery is no small feat. So I think it, could be a couple years, maybe on the more conservative side, and it could be as early as this year. So I think we'll just have to see what happens, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see how we can really improve the lives of so many people that are afflicted with these disorders.
Well, absolutely. And it's just so, so impactful and so meaningful. Is there like, do you think there's a Chat GPT-esque moment coming in brain computer interface, or was there already one and we weren't paying attention? Like between where we're at and, kind of mass adoption, what does that look like in your mind?
I've had my Chat GPT moments with BCIs for many years now. I think when I started making my film, I had a
Yeah.
handful of them. Watching someone feed themselves with their own arm and hand being stimulated with electrodes vis-a-vis their brain patterns, while their spinal cord is severed. I mean, that was just mind-boggling. That was absolutely mind-boggling. And I thought, okay, it's one thing to be able to operate a robotic arm with just your thoughts. It's another thing to be thinking about moving and then, having a device stimulate 28
Yeah.
muscles in your arms and hand so that your thoughts can basically reconnect to the muscles without any direct connection line to feed yourself again. I mean, that's just wild. Watching some of our patients play video games and do a better job than
Aw.
someone who's able-bodied and has,
Wow.
has a working arm and hand. Watching a patient drive a vehicle with just their thoughts. We have patients that are painting, that are creating art. I mean, it's like the scope of creativity is unlimited because anything you can imagine doing with your brain is something that this BCI can enable for someone who's completely locked in. I mean, I had another moment. This was just last month. I was up in San Francisco and visiting with one of the patients up there who's currently locked in with ALS. And this guy, Casey, who's just an extraordinary human being, and he's a climate activist and has spent his whole life sort of dedicated to trying, to doing these incredible campaigns for climate change. And he still goes to work every single day with his BCI. He uses his BCI to
Wow.
log in, to type out campaigns, to strategize, with his team members for this organization. And he's a locked in patient. Like I was having a conversation with him, and there's a little bit of a delay between, me asking him a question and then the BCI translates his brain signals into a decoder that then goes into a voice box so that I can hear him speak. It's his voice that AI has recreated.
Even that sentence, like what a crazy sentence, right? Like,
Yeah,
holy,
yeah,
like the
yeah.
amount of things that have to work well along that chain to get there is just like,
Yeah.
it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So, I guess I have those hair-raising moments all the time with BCIs, and it's not hard to imagine a world that, 15, 20 years from now, this is a lot more commonplace, and it's possible that people are getting these kinds of implants not just because they have paralysis, but because they have anxiety or treatment-resistant depression. And there's
Yeah.
all kinds of different ways that we'll be able to interface with the brain that we would never even conceive of now. And some of these things, of course, are not socially acceptable and are more terrifying in theory than exciting. But as someone who's always been a technologist, like it's hard not to see, kind of where this will go and all the unique ways that it will be. It will create sort of a magical existence in many ways, and then also raise a lot of questions.
So talk to me about the terrifying part. Like, what's the like, what's the the fear road here, I guess.
Well, we're already talking about the fear road now with our social media apps and this sort of
Yeah.
addiction that we feel when we're tethered to these devices. So imagine the device is now in your brain. I mean, it's connecting you directly to the cloud. It's possible that you would have glasses or some kind of other measure so that whatever's happening in your brain could be projected in front of you. I mean, you could imagine a very dystopic reality where we've now optimized our entire worlds for dopamine hits.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
like the Wall-E storyline.
That was the
where we're all
imagery that
just-
was conjuring up for me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like in our quest to reduce friction from our lives, do we also lose a lot of human connection in that? And I think we will. I mean, we're looking at people who are already developing relationships with AI chatbots. In Japan, having these like AI girlfriends or AI boyfriends is increasingly popular. What does that look like in 10 years? Will people be intimate anymore? I was just in a Waymo a few times in the past month, and it was my first experience being in a self-driving car, and I loved it. Like I was shocked by how much I loved it, because I get into this like calm car where I get to choose my music. I can choose the volume, I can choose the temperature. I don't necessarily have to speak to someone when I'm not in the mood to have a whole conversation with a driver. I don't have to deal with any like weird fragrances that make me want to sneeze or cough or give me a headache. And I realized like that's also sad, just because I'm having a less friction experience in a Waymo. I'm now more apt to do that than order a drivered car. And so I can see how like just all of us will start to be driven a bit more into these like modes of isolation in our desire to have less friction. And so we're going to lose a lot in the process there.
Well, because it's like, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, it's like you can have your perfect individualized reality, right? But by doing that, you're cutting yourself out from everybody else's perfectly individualized reality. And so, what does that do to human relationships, to human connection? And yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, to me, there's like the macro question of like, what does that mean for us as a species? Like if we can do that. So I don't know. Like, is that Taryn, tell me, is there a flip side to that? Is there like a pull that like you're excited about pulling us back in the right direction, or are we just all scattering ourselves farther and farther?
I think this will just continue to be the conversation.
Yeah.
And just like any action, there will be a separate and equal reaction. So we'll just keep seeing the tides moving back and forth, and people, I think, grappling with these issues on an individual level, on a societal level. Capitalism is obviously going to have, its kind of forces at will here. Geopolitically, we're going to have different forces happening in different countries around AI and usage. And culturally, of course, we'll have those forces. It's going to be a wild, wild 10 to 20 years. And I think that the best thing people can do is, I think the best things people can do beyond actually just being aware and getting to know the tools and having these conversations is having a growth mindset and having a flexible mindset. And, trying our best to develop more like abundant worldviews is probably, giving us a better path to success. But yeah, we also all really need therapy, right? Like, no one should be building these tools without having better understood the mechanics of their own mind, their own behaviors, their own instincts. I think understanding our cognitive biases and our limitations, we have to be doing that as we work and use these tools. Otherwise, we're going to be building something that's really not in any of our best interests.
Right. But they it sounds like they are potentially tools to help us get to know ourselves better in that capacity.
100%. I mean, I talk to my chat GPT every day about all the hard things in life, and it helps me so much. So much. Yeah.
And like, I've talked to this about a few different people, and I'll push on that for a second, Taryn, and just like ask you, like, do you? Because I'm like, I'm hearing now like AI quote therapists are like starting to outperform regular therapists, right? And like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's we don't have time to unpack like all the nuances of this and like the stigmas of mental health or like the benefits we get individually and collectively, I think, from being
Yeah.
tuned into that. But I guess like I'm excited to hear you, who's again like at kind of the vanguard of this, like recognize the opportunity here. I don't know that like to me is cause for
It's huge.
optimism.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, mental health is probably one of the greatest afflictions of our world right now. And whether it's isolation, loneliness, fear, depression, anxiety. And for those of us who are fortunate enough to have the resources to go to therapists, we know that not all therapists are created equal.
Yeah.
They're trained differently. They have different levels of expertise. Sometimes they make things worse. I've had it all. And I've had amazing therapists who have changed my life. And now we have this tool that, we've seen studies that show people are much more open with AI tools than with therapists because they know that there's non-judgment happening. They're also not sort of looking at someone that might cause them to have preconceived fears or biases about. And then the kind of the most important thing is like the AI is able to maintain this absolutely, even tone and
Right.
sort of open, non-judgmental listening, and then has this like endless array of frameworks and tools that the AI can bring into their toolbox. Now the question is, will these AI systems get better and better so that if something isn't working well for someone, they can try on a different tool and they're not sort of stuck in this like overgeneralized way of delivering therapy to people? Because it shouldn't be a one size fits all. But I do feel excited. I think everyone on this planet should be able to have access to a therapist that helps them better understand their own mind. And this is the kind of tool that'll do that.
Yeah. Well, because it's democratizing, right? Like we talked about like how with some of these things, like, it becomes a privilege to disconnect. But with this, like, it's like being able to take something that was, only available maybe to, a privileged few and, what happens when everybody gets that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Totally. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's so exciting, Taryn. And I think I'm going to, let that be the last piece of our conversation because it's a happy note. And, we've gone through like a full array of like emotions here today. And so I love the optimism of that. And like to be able to like reflect on like the humanity of it, I guess, and like what this can do for us as individuals. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. This was super insightful for me. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And hopefully see you again soon.